and I was at Cannon Air Force Base, Clovis, New Mexico, flying the F-86H. The F-86F is the one that they used for air-to-air and all that in Korea. The 86H had a bigger engine in it, and the F had a clamshell canopy, sliding canopy, where the H had it was a lot better airplane. And let's see, then, can't remember exactly when we got into the F-100s. F-100s replaced that. And then we all transitioned into the F-100 there. Did I ever tell you, or did Tommy ever tell you about when I ejected from an F-100?
No, I didn't know about that.
It was kind of hairy. I'm damn lucky to be alive, but we were SAC, for some reason, was programmed to get F-100s. I don't know why. But anyway, they sent these experienced, most of them were captains. I was a first lieutenant then. I was assistant flight commander, and my flight commander had just left to go to squadron officer school. So anyway, when these guys came in, we were giving them quick checkouts. They were very experienced pilots. But, you know, in F-84, or F-84s, you know, the swept wing. But anyway, for some reason, they were getting 100s. But anyway, I was assigned to check this one guy out. He'd had his instrument flights. He'd had some other flights, but he never had any acrobatics. So anyway, of course, I didn't know this guy in the briefing room. We briefed and all that. Well, we went out to the flight line to check in. We each had single-seaters, of course. And generally, when you do acrobatics, you don't have any tanks, you know, because they can come off if you're pulling a lot of G's. So we got out the flight line. He had a clean airplane, and for some reason, the frag screwed up, and I had two 275 drop tanks. So we went ahead and took off, and so we just flew formation, you know, and I hadn't really flown with the guy, so he was right in there all the time. We were doing this, and then we started doing barrel roll. And then when the tanks go dry, a light comes on, so then you can start pulling more G's. But then we start doing big barrel rolls completely around. He's right on the wing all the time. So anyway, did all this stuff, and then the end of the mission was to do a loop. And a loop in the 100, you did 2 clearing turns. One like this, dump the nose way down, you're to pick up 500 knots. And another, it's to pick up airspeed and also clear the airspace. We had flying farmers around. And of course, I forgot to tell you, you have the wingman drop back 1,000 feet in trail. And he does. So anyway, the second turn, just close to picking up 500 knots, there was kind of a thud, and the stick went dead. It had an artificial feel system, but it just didn't go limp. But, you know, it felt like it was doing something, but it didn't do anything to the control. Well, the nose kept going deeper and steeper and steeper. I scanned the instrument panel, and we had a placard over here of the important ones, like a fire warning light and all that. And it didn't have a fire warning light, didn't have anything. And the stick, I couldn't roll. I was trying to roll the wings level and pull it up, and it just got steeper and steeper. Suddenly I realized I was going straight in at 500 knots. This is in the north part in an acrobatic area, probably 50, 75 miles north of Clovis, New Mexico, which is dirt land, dirt farmers, not much on the ground out there. So anyway, going back a little bit, once every month, we had to go over to the altitude chamber, sit in an inert seat, and practice ejecting. You know, you pull your helmet down, you sit up straight, and you pull the armrest. Either one blows the canopy. The trigger's on the right side. When you pull the armrest up, it exposes the trigger. Well, for some reason, this was different. I have a small hand, and I did all this. Of course, I didn't have time to do my visor or anything. And I reached down, well, I squeezed, and nothing happened. And I looked down, and I realized my hand wasn't on the trigger, it was on a guard. And then I realized, so I went bam, and away we went, all bent over, and that's why I'm having back problems. But a 500 knot, and when you blow that canopy, it sounds like a freight train coming through there with a wind blast and everything. And of course, in those days we had the B-15 chute, I think they call it, 30-foot diameter thing. And when you take off, you go through, you know what checklists are. After takeoff checklist, you do various things. And one thing is to take the D-ring. It's just on a little hook on your harness. And for takeoff, you take that off and you hook it some other place, I can't remember. So anyway, if you eject it 30,000, say, it will let you free fall. You could be, out oxygen or frozen or what. It'll let you free fall down to 15,000. It'll open automatically, barometric. Okay, if you're going down, you take that thing off the hook and put it on the parachute on the D-ring, and then below 15,000, all you have to do is to be able to eject, and then from then on, everything starts working automatically, and thank God for that. Anyway, I tumbled, I don't know how many times. The next thing I knew, wham, the chute opened. I went for the D-ring and it was already open. And the airplane was right down there, and there was nothing left. All there was black smoke coming up, a little fire. And I thought, my God, I'm going right into the damn airplane. Well, anyway, there's a cap rock. I was above this cap rock. And at that time, with all that noise and everything, it's dead silence. And it's not like going the highway where you got fence posts or things going by. There's no sense of, it just feels like you're hanging there, And then I got down below the cap rock. Well, I noticed next time I looked, I can't remember, the plane was way back there. Well, anyway, I realized there was a pretty good wind drifting me. I got down below the cap rock and I start swinging like this. I probably only went out like that, but it felt like about like that. And I realized I was swinging backwards, and I lost my helmet. I don't know why. I had my chin strap on and everything, but I lost my helmet. It just ripped it off. And I didn't want to land and whack my head on. So I reached up. We never had any hanging harness training like they do nowadays. But anyway, I reached up on the risers, and I figured, well, I'll just turn myself around. Well, I went like that. I let go, and whoosh, I went right back where I was. And I reached up again, started to turn myself around, crash into the ground, which was good because, I was a lot lower than I thought. But I actually hit kind of like this going forward. It's exactly like you want to be, not backward. And away we went. The chute, it was a very, very windy day, probably 40 knot gusts, and the chute never collapsed. And away we went, gangbusters on the ground. And I was trying to spill the damn chute, trying to pull risers in. When you carry your chute out, these things are, there's only one on those days where you had to undo this thing and squeeze, and the riser would come off. Well, anyway, when you're carrying it out, the airplane's right here, but when you're hanging in it, it's up here. And also, it wasn't my chute, because that day my chute was in repack, so I had to borrow somebody. And by borrow Bill Boyd, you always borrow somebody else's chute that's a little bit your size or smaller, because you don't go out and adjust everything. They're all fitted to you intact. So anyway, I couldn't spill the chute. And the way we were going, I was probably going 20 miles an hour. And somebody said, "Why don't you get up and run?" Well, that doesn't work. Nowadays, years after that, I think after mine and a whole bunch of them, they decided to add a little training, and they'd pull you behind a Jeep, and you'd teach you how to roll over and all that. And you want to be on your back, not your stomach, because you're actually being kind of pulled up. So anyway, we went a long ways, and I thought, I'm going to Denver. Man, we were going like I was pulling the sagebrush, and I didn't. And then the farmers had these kind of dammed up places, a low place with a dam on the end, so the cattle could feed. I saw this dam coming, and I went through that like a crisscross, just planed through that lake. The bottom of the parachute was never it was at least 4 feet off the ground. And I remember the dam coming up, and I thought, man, I'm going to go right into the dam. Well, I saw it coming. I went like that, and I pushed myself over the dam, but I had big bruises here, and I think I would. So anyway, went, and finally there was a lull in the wind, I guess, and I managed to spill the chute. When I looked up, and I thought it was my wingman circling, but he was from a different base. He was from Bergstrom Air Force, Texas. He didn't even know where he was because he'd been flying wing. He didn't live there. He didn't know the area and all that. So I guess he, on the radio, reported it, and so he headed back to the base. But this was a guy from the other squadron. When we were doing acrobatics, they were on the gunnery mission, and we did a lot of low-level stuff at 500 knots. And it's really hard to navigate when you're on the deck because you don't see much coming in. So you got to make checkpoints. And then on the range, they had some colored barrels there. And we were practice delivering nukes. We had Mark 28 nuclear weapons. But so anyway, that guy was on a low-level turn up by Amarillo, heading over to another turn point, and he saw this flash. And he said, "Oh, no, not another one." We had a lot of accidents in the early days of the 100. And so he was the guy that was rescapping me. Well, anyway, I wasn't sure where he saw me or what, but for some reason, I decided I needed to spread out the chute and with the wind, but I found some rocks. And then he came down, I was like this, and he came down real low and was making a pass. And I stood up, and I figured if I went like that, I would show him I was okay. Well, I stood up, and I guess just adrenaline, I just melted back down to the ground. So anyway, he disappeared, so I knew there'd be a helicopter. Well, the next thing, this farmer in an old...
What about the fence next to
you? Yeah, okay, I'm getting to that. This farmer comes roaring up in this old station wagon, and he had his son with him, and these guys were real suntanned and all that. I said, "You okay, Sonny?" Well, anyway, he says, "Get the car. I got to take you to San Juan, a little bitty town. All they had was a clinic there. I didn't want to go there. They'd never find me." And I said, "I need to go back to where the crash site was." And he said, "Okay, get in." I said, "Oh, we got to take that chute." For some reason, I thought I was going to have to pay for that chute. I wasn't about to leave it out. Well, anyway, between the three of us and the wind, I remember trying to get that damn chute all stuffed in the back of his station wagon. Well, anyway, we got in there. It's the old bench type, there wasn't any console. And a real rustic guy, I remember, suntan, and they had hats. And we get in, and I'm sitting in the middle, and his son's over here, and his son just kept looking at me like, "Where did you come from?" But I drug on the ground, my arms were raw, and my knees were raw. It was summer. I was a hot rock fighter pilot, and I had my sleeves rolled up, which is a no-no. But anyway, the first thing he said, "You hungry?" I said, "Yeah." And he peps me out one of these little candy kisses. I bailed out. I ejected right at noon, 12 o'clock noon. So anyway, we turn around. we turn around and head back. I finally convinced him I want to go back to the crash site. And I see this barbed wire fence. I was paralleling this barbed wire fence all the way up, and I got to thinking, what if I'd gone this way? It would have shredded me, because the chute would have been over it, and it would just drug me through that. So anyway, it was hard to get back. And then I don't even remember seeing a house down there, but he drove up in this lady's yard, and I remember she had a sunbonnet, and I think she had one horse, and of course the crash stampeded the horse. And she was, where's my horse? Where's my horse? Well, anyway, he knew her, and he said, well, this is the pilot, can I take him out to the crash? So anyway, we got there, and here's all these farmers out there looking down into the crater. There's about a 30-foot crater, maybe 20. There's nothing left of the airplane, of course, at 500 knots, except there were things from the instrument panel. The plane probably hit almost straight down, so things splatter. When you hit like that, things go way down. But I remember in the front of the hole, there were instruments from the instrument panel laying there. Why? And then over here, with the oleo on the gear, where the strut goes up and down, there was a strut and one wheel laying out to the side, and a whole bunch of sheet metal. And of course, the engine would have been behind me. I would have been buried way down below that. So, but anyway, these farmers were all looking down there. When I got up there, there's probably 5 or 6 guys that were looking down there. I wonder if they're all killed. They didn't know it was an airliner or what. And of course, when we flew, when we weren't on the gunnery range, we had 20 millimeter rounds up already in, but when you taxied out for a gunnery range, they would pull through, and cock them, so to speak. But we carried all those rounds all the time, and we had ejectors on the tanks, and they're pretty powerful. And I didn't know if all those had gone off or not, so I was trying to get these guys back, And anyway, finally a helicopter came in. And generally when we had a crash, each squadron had a chaplain, and generally they would go out in a helicopter. We had H-19 helicopters, the old-fashioned kind of a conning tower, and then a little compartment, cargo passenger area. But anyway, when it landed, no, I'm not. I'm talking a flight surgeon. Every squadron had a flight surgeon, not a chaplain. And they would, when the klaxon rolled off, they'd run down to the flight line and get on the helicopter. Well, anyway, I expected Captain, I can't remember his name. Anyway, out jumps a fellow pilot from the squadron, plus a crew chief, and the pilot and the co-pilot still sitting there. And I said, by that time, I really was raw. I was stiff and all this sand bedded in. And I was hoping the good doctor, but for some reason, he didn't get on board. So, and the next thing that happened was this brand new, bright station wagon comes roaring up, and out jumps the flying safety officer from the other wing. We had 2 wings, 3 squadrons in each wing. And he jumps out and starts chewing me out, but he's in uniform, and I, what's going on? But anyway, he was on leave with his family on the way to Denver, and of course he looks over and sees this crash, and of course he figures out how to get through all these fences, and he finally got over there. So he, of course, takes charge, and he told our fellow pilot, you stay here with the wreckage tonight. And so I go back to get on the helicopter, and I can't remember the pilot's name right now, Joe Hansard. And he wandered around, and I think he found my helmet and all that. But anyway, we go to take off. We get in the back, and there's just the crew chief and me. And, when you get on an airplane, you naturally, there's a headset hanging there. So I put it on. Well, the pilot and the co-pilot didn't know that. And when they took off, the pilot on intercom said to his co-pilot, he says, "Hey, Tommy, how does it feel to pick up a live one for a change?"
Wow.
And that kind of got me. I punched the button and said, "Thanks a lot, guys." And I got back. I had a big welcoming committee. I figured they'd take me right to the hospital, but they landed on the flight line, and our wing commander was at Langley Air Force Base at some meeting or something. So the other wing commander was there, and immediately he was out to hang me. You know, he started saying, "What was your load meter reading? What was this? What was that?" I said, "Sir, I didn't have time to look at it." But anyway, there was a whole bunch of people around, and finally the chaplain made his way through, and he said, "Colonel, let's let this guy go to the hospital." So I go up to the hospital, and they take me up there, and the sergeant comes out and hands me a scrub brush with real heavy bristles, and he says, "Go clean yourself up." And I didn't need a bristle and all that wrong. Anyway, I finally got home, and Carol and I were just dating at the time. We just barely met, you know. I don't know how she heard about it. Oh, she was working on base. She was going to the University of New Mexico, but she was home for the summer clerk type of job. So that was kind of exciting, but I was very close to buying the farm, as we say.